Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, shalom, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you today? It's Ken at 10. If you've never been here before and you're wondering what's going on, so am I, really. Good morning. It's Ken, it's 10, and that's why. We're James Alexander Estate Agents. We broadcast daily from southwest London from our offices in Norbury, which is a beautiful little area, commuter town between Streatham and Norbury. So I hope you're doing well today. Thanks for joining us if you're back, and if you're new, then welcome along. We talk about property, the headlines, what's going on nationally and locally. And locally at the moment, as you can see behind me, the big 44, we have 44 days left for the June stamp duty deadline, meaning the massive savings that can be had by completing before that date falls ever closer. And the pressure is building on agents and solicitors and mortgage brokers, and the brunt of the pressure, to be honest, I feel agents, we're doing our best to push it along, but I think the brunt of the pressure does fall on solicitors, some of whom are handling it very well. As I've broadcast previously, 80% of whom are finding it difficult, and understandably so. Massive pressure from their clients, many of them holding hundreds of files and struggling to cope with the level of volume. I'm sure they'll be glad for a rest after the deadline, but it may not slow down. It may not abate. A few headlines for you today, and then I want to talk about some future technology. Love a bit of future tech, don't you? The way we're going to heat our homes in the future. I'll come on to that at the end of the show. First of all, let's talk about land banking. Now, the government, this is Housing Secretary Robert Jenrick, and he writes in the Daily Telegraph today to confirm the government is considering plans to tax land banking. Land banking is the process where developers buy sites, obtain planning permission, and then do nothing with them, often for years, in the hope of future capital growth, and then building them as and when they decide. And it's terrible because what it can lead to is derelict sites just kind of hanging around and, affecting neighborhoods locally, and it's quite frustrating for all concerned. And so they're considering taxing it, and this seems a sensible thing to me because that will encourage building, and that has to be a good thing. The government says he aims to make planning much more straightforward and accessible, to boost public participation in planning, with just 3% of the public engaging with the current system, while making high quality design on local views and beauty central, so that the look of the streets reflects the aesthetic preferences of the local people. I'm sure that's quite true, is it? Looking at some of the things they let by these days. But nonetheless, good call, I think, for taxing land banking. And then another one that caught my eye today is the situation as far as Grenfell is concerned. And this is a call from Labour. And housing developers should be given a deadline to fix the post-Grenfell cladding crisis. And this is something that I completely am behind. The government do need to put pressure on this to get rid of this cladding. We've already had close to a second disaster on this, and the government still seems no closer to assisting and putting the financial backing that's required in order to solve these problems and support the leaseholders. So many leaseholders are in awful positions, and it's not their fault. I've said it many times. The developers, they built the houses, the government had the planning system. These people went in thinking that the UK planning system and building regulations would protect them from such issues in this day and age, and it hasn't. And therefore, the government have a duty, in my view, an obligation to step in and help people. So it's good to see some pressure being brought about on that. And we hope that that'll be brought to bear and we'll end up with the situation being dealt with sooner. But I'm, not optimistic on that. Let's see what happens. But all behind that, let's get this cladding crisis solved as soon as possible. Now, on to new tech. Love a bit of new tech, don't you? This time, it's an interesting one in the Times. A company's won backing from government and external investors for giant heat batteries that could keep our homes warm in the future. Hampstead-based Caldera uses cheap off-peak power and electrical elements to heat hugely insulated block of material made from recycled metals and aggregate. Water pipes then pass through the block, heating up the water that can then be used in conventional central heating system to heat radiators and a hot water tank. Interesting idea, isn't it? Just imagine this big lump that's kind of, sat somewhere. Where would it go? How would it fit? Lots of questions, but great to see people looking at different ways of tackling climate change and helping people with heating costs, which is going to become more and more of a consideration as time goes on, I feel, because, we demand more and more power, don't we, for everything we do. And at the same time, we're trying to become greener. And those two things are kind of at odds. But hopefully, with solar technology moving on and new technology such as this heat battery, we can look for a better future. Apart from that, the weather here in southwest London is absolutely cracking. Beautiful, lovely spring day for a change after all this rain. We understand we've got more rain to come. Where you're in the UK, what do you expect? We get rain. It's what we do best, unfortunately. A little frustrating, but there we are. A couple of great instructions coming on this week. One needing a lot of modernisation, and that's going to be popular. We always find that. One's needing work. I always say we're in the Homes Under the Hammer generation. And yes, I'm biased because I'm on the show a lot, but I do believe that people sometimes look at Homes Under the Hammer and there's that house that needs loads of work, and then whoosh, there it is, done. And it all looks very simple, doesn't it? And the reality is it's neither simple nor cheap. But people do like it. They are keen on it. They love the idea of a project. And these days we find more often than not, it's not developers buying rundown houses. It's families looking to do the project themselves. And the results are sometimes spectacular and sometimes they struggle. It's really an interesting balance and something we see all the time. Apart from that, yeah, still busy on sales. The most popular properties are still in the £500,000 bracket, even though it's unlikely if you buy a property today, you're going to make that deadline, because we now have only 44 days, just over a month left before that deadline passes. So if you're a cash buyer, there's still a chance, but it becomes slimmer by the day. If you're in a chain, make sure everybody knows what's going on and make sure everybody's got their ducks in a row, or you might not make it and that could cost you dearly. What might that mean? That's the big question, isn't it? What might that mean for the future? Really, really interested to see what happens after the June deadline. And then we'll see where the market lies for the rest of the year. Obviously, we've still got the relief doubling from 125,000 to 250,000, giving a small saving of a couple of £1,000 or so. But the big savings to be had are only there until the end of June. So really interesting to see on the impact this has on the housing market, because the flip side is more and more companies now, more and more lenders are coming out with 95% deals nationwide. By the way, this is not mortgage advice. Nationwide have just advised that they've brought out a 95% mortgage for first-time buyers, and this is not part of the government scheme. So it's interesting to see how the government, having offered to underwrite these mortgages, we've also found that mortgagees are coming forward and thinking, hey, we can take that risk as well. And in the case of the nationwide one, we understand that it's for houses only, which does restrict it in an area like ours, because most property in the range of first-time buyers is likely to be leasehold. But nonetheless, another step in the right direction, another lender offering 95% loans, and that can only be good for younger people getting onto the ladder. And as I've said many times, you know, one of the things that's been missing in the current market is the first-time buyer, and they do seem to be slowly creeping back, and hopefully that will negate the stamp duty deadline, because for most first-time buyers that won't apply, because stamp duty is free largely for first-time buyers, depending on what price you're buying at. So that's it from Ken at 10 today. Hope you're having a great day. We've got lots of valuations and lots of sales to chase. Make sure we get them through. If you need any advice, I always say this, please do reach out, DM, send us a text message, phone us 0208 679 8601, have a chat. No obligation, and if you're out of area, we're always happy to try and help and guide you in the right direction if you just want to know what you should be doing next. That's what we're here for. So have a fantastic day, look after your family and friends, enjoy the sunshine, and we'll be back same time tomorrow. Until then, take care.